Welcome everyone to a special edition of Cuentos Y Comics, a special Sunday edition. Tonight, we are back from a small hiatus. Just for those who may not remember, or I'm sure you do, but this is Cuentos Y Comics. Many of you may recognize me from the Latino Comics Expo as the operations manager. I am the comics creator of the forthcoming project, The Millennials. And then tonight's guest is Terry Blas. Terry Blas, he has many works that include Hotel Dare, You Say Latino, and You Say Latinx. Many of you may remember that from Vox. But tonight we're here to talk about Terry's new title for Marvel Comics, Reptil, that hits comic book stores this Wednesday. Please join me in welcoming Terry. Terry, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Hey, thank you so much for joining me. This is a very special occasion for me. I've been a huge fan. When the news first came out, it just, it was beautiful to hear. I've been following your work for some time, and so thank you for joining me.
Oh yeah, thank you for having me. I love Cuentos Y Comics, so this is great.
Yeah, which I love hearing that, and you don't know how beautiful. I appreciate that. So thank you so much.
Sure.
So let's. Normally we start off with the hot topic of the week. But I think we can tell that it is hot here in Chicago. You're based outside of Portland. How are you guys doing over there?
It's rainy and kind of cold right now. It was hot like a week ago, but now it's kind of typical Portland weather. So
yeah, here in the Windy City, it's like when it's cold, it's really cold. But when it's hot, I mean, you can tell just by.
Yeah.
But yeah, so. Let's before we get into Reptil, I do want to start off with some of your most your recognized works. Tell us about You Say Latino and You Say Latinx. It's a series that you produced for Vox. First there's a story behind it. It got but go ahead.
Yeah, I had been doing a few other comics, like long form graphic novel kind of stuff, and I just kind of saw the power in a short educational comic. Some other members of the comic studio, Helioscope, that I'm a member of, were doing things like that. And I thought they were really interesting. And living in Portland, it's, like the whitest major city in the country. And so I encountered a lot of people who used the terms Hispanic and Latino interchangeably. And they, as far as I knew, didn't mean the same thing. And I thought that making just like a short 6-page comic that explained what those terms are, and that maybe also talked a little bit about like my upbringing and how I identify, could be interesting. So I just went ahead and made that. It took me a little while, and then I put it online, I think on like my Tumblr when people used Tumblr. And the next day, mainly because a friend of mine, she reblogged it and she had a lot of followers. But the next day I woke up to like 25,000 reblogs. Yeah, and I was like, what just happened? I don't know what's going on. And because of that, it gained some really interesting exposure. Like Latina Magazine wanted to run it, OPB, the Oregon Public Broadcasting, PBS basically, NPR, National Public Radio. And then Vox.com asked if they could run it. And I let them. I said, sure. And so it ran on their site, which gained it a little bit more exposure. And at the time, I, put the comic out. I guess a lot of people read it, and it was a big lesson in like, don't read the comments, because it was the other lesson I learned from it was something that I really took to heart, was that someone said, yeah, a lot of people are going to have issue with it and hate it and not agree with what you said, but a lot of people are going to love it and find it helpful and educational. So, you can never help that. Just don't pay attention to the negative ones. Also, because it's like a 6-page comic, you know, it's not like a 30-page college dissertation that I get deep into. It's just here's a basic understanding of what these terms mean and how I define them and what they mean to me. So that was this comic, You Say Latino, and I printed up like a mini of it, and it sort of, you know, looks like this. I use myself as sort of the kind of person talking about the terms, and that spawned me wanting to do another one because of the, I think, divisiveness with the term Latinx or Latinx in the Latinx Latino community. And so that one was this, which I did for Vox a few months after the You Say Latino one. And I just found it interesting because what I took away from this was, again, a lot of people felt really divisive about it. And all I said was, I just want to be inclusive and make people feel welcome. And if you think that language shouldn't change, fine, but it changes all the time, whether or not we like it. and maybe Latinx isn't conjugatable. Maybe it makes Spanish like not speakable. Fine. Then use like the E. Then say bienvenidas todas. Like you can do that. But if you have a problem with that, then I don't know. That's just how I like to be. And I feel like when our community is the largest ethnic minority group in the country, there's going to be many people who don't identify a certain way. So I feel as a person, the best thing I can do is just refer to people the way they want to be referred to. So that's why I made those comics.
Absolutely, and language does evolve. I mean, like just the way I'm Spanglish, right? English and Spanish,
Yeah.
the way it's mixed together. I get tripped out when I hear the word bica, which it's a bike, bicicleta, is a, but bica, and
The
so
one that got me was parquear. And I
parquear,
was like, you mean estacionar or park?
like yeah, when it comes to language, it just like yeah, there's dialects which I have one apparently when I went out to California and stuff, but um, but yeah, the constant evolution, and I think you're onto something. I think the E, whether people again people not everyone's gonna love everything, right? But I think that is a good potential solution for sure.
Yeah, I'm not telling people how to talk or what to use. I'm just telling you what I like to do, and you do with that what you will.
But I am intrigued. If we could rewind a little bit, I am intrigued in the approach. So, you say Latino again. You put it out there in the Tumblr verse. You tumbled it, uh, but then you kind of worked on you say Latinx, and you had a different approach on how you went to Vox for that, right? Can you talk about?
Yeah. You Say Latino was a comic that I had already finished when Vox became interested in running it. And You Say Latinx was a comic I wanted to do as well. And I just started working on it. And then I thought, hey, wait a minute, like Vox ran You Say Latino. And if they're searching for more Latin-based content, then I may as well pitch this to them and say, hey, do you want to run this too? And they agreed. They said, yeah, we'd love to do that. And I said, great, this time you can pay me. And that's how it worked. I think a lot of times um, in comics, it can be a rough business. So we're like, well, nobody's giving me any work and I'm not finding any work. But just reaching out to people that you've worked with before and saying like, hey, I have another thing. Sometimes that really works. I've done 3 comics with Vox. The latest one was about how the United States does not have an official language and how people freak out when they hear a language being spoken that's not English, because that affects me. I speak to my mom on the phone in Spanish. She lives in Idaho, and I don't want someone, if she's like at the grocery store here, talking to me on the phone, I don't want someone to mess with her. And so I thought it was an important comic. And again, I think when you do a short educational comic, there's a difference between if you hand someone 6 pages of like text and prose, they're kind of like, oh, all right, I'll read this later. But you
Yeah,
hand someone a comic and they kind of start reading it right away. So I
yeah,
think that's the power of comics in terms of educational work too.
and it's very approachable. I mean, it's very it's the medium continues to grow, and finally, like I think it's like people with our background are finally kind of like embracing it even more, younger readers.
Yeah.
So, and so there are individuals like yourself that are kind of breaking into the mainstream. um, Marvel reached out to you. They I'm sure they saw your work. Again, great book on Hotel there, and as you mentioned, you say Latino, you say Latinx. How was that call? Like when you got the call from Marvel, like tell us about that. And then
Sure. It was an email from my agent. And I love her. She's fantastic. She was like, "Hey, check this out." And she just forwarded me the email asking if, from an editor at Marvel, asking if I would be interested in writing this series, or not necessarily. They didn't offer it to me like, yes, would like you to do it. They said, we would like you to pitch something if you are interested in this. And they made it clear that I wasn't the only person that they might be reaching out to, which is great, because when I hear that, the way my mind works, having been raised military, Mormon, which I'm not anymore, but those things instill in me like hard work ethic, getting up early, doing things quickly and well. So I thought, if I can pitch them something that it doesn't have to be perfect, but if it's good enough, then they'll likely go like, yeah, let's just go with him, because I don't want to have to look for someone else.
yeah,
Like the editors do a ton of work and they edit multiple books at once. So I said, yes, I'm very interested. And now I'm going to read everything I can find about him, which is what I did. The thing that I found interesting about this prospective job was, if I'm being honest, I've mentioned this before, but this isn't a dig on anything, but I had never heard of the character before. And I
yeah,
thought, how have I never heard of this character? Like, if he's a Mexican American Marvel hero, I should know who he is. I should know about this. Furthermore, if he's a Mexican American kid who can turn into dinosaurs, how is this not the most popular character for kids? I was like, that's every kid wants that. Like, I still have a dinosaur toy collection. So I've always loved dinosaurs. I was like, this is perfect for me. I can totally do this. And after reading everything I could find, the thing that I was struck the most with was that this character's parents were paleontologists and they disappeared on a dig. And up to the point that I'd read as everything I could find, I said, well, where are they? Like, if someone in my family went missing, and I've seen things and read things about people who have family members who've gone missing, they're consumed by it. And so I was like, well, that needs to be explored. So I
yeah.
wrote up a pitch that sort of dealt with that. And for me, I do like a story that kind of takes place in its own, not in its own world. Obviously, it's within Marvel, but like that's not connected so much to other stuff. But I needed to know what was happening currently in the Marvel landscape in comics, so that it felt like it fit.
Okay.
And with the Champions Outlawed, which is one of my favorite titles right now, there's something called Kamala's Law, which Miss Marvel got hurt in one of the comics, and because of that, they instituted a law where teenage superheroes aren't allowed to use their powers. And I thought, well, this is kind of great. It's a great setup where Humberto he has a grandpa. That's like one of the only other things that you kind of really know about him.
Okay.
I thought, well, if his grandpa's getting old and he might need some help. So for me, a lot of stories about the Latinx identity deal with family as well. And so I was like, great, he's going to help his grandpa move in with his Tia Gloria and her kids. And he's going to be like, Kamala's Law, fine, I'm going to focus on family. I'm not going to do any superheroing. Like, part of his power set is that he can turn into a full dinosaur, but kind of Hulk style. He can't really control it. And if that were me, that would freak me out. So he's like, I'm going to just chill on this. And obviously it doesn't go the way he wants. So that's sort of what I pitched, and they seemed to dig it. So they asked me to do it.
No, and it's again, it's beautiful because again, there are Latinx characters within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but they haven't been explored like this. The beautiful thing here, it's like it's not um, it's not where there's a particular character that's being created and taking up a separate mantle, so that
Yeah.
you don't have that baggage. But here you are able to explore and expand this character's universe. Which how daunting is that, or how do you how is there any pressure there? Like just kind
Maybe there's a little bit of pressure, but I think that if I think about that too much, then it will, sort of take over. So I just think, I just need to tell a fun, cool, good story. And so I try to focus on, setting up a great story that people can dig into. The nature of comics is that, are you writing something that's going to make someone want to turn the page when they read the last panel? Are you going to end the issue on something that makes people need to read the next issue? And I think that having a character like him, I guess I just kind of dove into the idea of, yeah, this character needs to be seen. And that helped me develop the story as well, because part of what it gets into overall, without revealing story points, is if Umberto is sort of putting the superheroing behind, then what does that do for a community that needs to see a visible hero? Then they don't have one.
Yeah.
And that was sort of what I took from, like, I don't know who this hero is. So there's a character in the book that might also be like, we don't know who you are. Like, why? You have powers, you can do stuff. So I think that those are things that hopefully come across in a strong way, because I'm very passionate about helping people understand, like I mentioned, that we are the largest ethnic minority group in the country. We, in the next 10 to 15 years, will be about a quarter of the entire country. And we also spend the most money pre-COVID on movie ticket sales every weekend, like
Yeah.
25%.
Yeah.
So we're supporting stories about characters and people who may not look like us, sound like us, think like us in some ways. So if a movie like Coco made more money in China than like all the Pixar movies combined. It made more money in Mexico than any other movie in history in Mexican cinema in the first 2 weeks that it was out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because it had a great, I think, marketing machine behind it. So if you help people in the Latinx community know that those things are out there for us, we will support them. And to me, I didn't feel, I think, pressured. It felt more exciting that, like, hopefully I can help bring this character to the forefront and help people kind of relate to him and get to know him more as like a fun hero. He's a kid. He's 16, and I think sometimes he's not written that way.
Yeah, because he was part of the Avengers Academy, and I agree. But in regard to this character, what do you wish for this? What's like? Because I know you have a strategy where because you mentioned like your background, and you tend to create these lists of what you want, what goal you want to achieve. What's something you want this character to achieve, or what would you like to achieve through this character?
Is it bad to say action figures?
Hey, I was waiting for the answer of a movie, like a Marvel project. But man, hey, action figures, I would kill for a Reptil.
Listen. The idea of a Reptil action figure with removable parts and dinosaur parts you can add onto him, you could do anything. That's a toy waiting to happen.
Yeah.
Or like the Marvel Legends line of toys they make?
Yeah.
Then just have like the separate parts be like the extra parts that you get. I don't know. I've already thought about it.
Marvel and Hasbro, a build-a-figure of Reptil. We want that now.
Part of what this relates, I promise, but part of what I wanted to do with my book Hotel Dare was I thought, if this is my only chance to do like a fantasy for Mexicans, all of our modern fantasy is like European in its visual language, right? Like Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, Harry Potter, it's all like very, very English. So I wanted to do something, a fantasy, but inspired by Aztec visual images and things like that. I thought, if this is my one chance, then I'm going to throw everything I can into it. So there's going to be unicorns and robots and monsters and aliens in this book. And the reason I did that was because I feel like as kids, when we are playing, that's when we start developing kind of our storytelling skills.
Yeah.
And I don't know kids who like exclusively play with Ninja Turtles and then put it away, and then exclusively play with He-Man and put it away. That's Toy Story. In Toy Story, they play with all their toys together and create these cool stories. And that's what I wanted to do. So I feel like an action figure that a kid could play with would be amazing. I think that the industry in terms of like Hollywood, I love movies. I think movies are amazing, but I think I'm someone who almost prefers a really well-made TV show, because something like WandaVision, that's like what, an 8-hour, 9-hour movie. So you get more story, you get more like, meat to that story. And yeah, I would kill for a TV show. I think that'd be awesome. I have no power over something like that, but
It would be amazing, but especially again, just given that our culture is being recognized, it's being celebrated, it's being highlighted on screen within this expansive universe.
yeah.
That's the exciting part. I do want to show our audience something to look forward to. I believe this is yeah. I took it from.
Ah, yeah.
That's okay, but
Mhm.
tell us about this image. I believe this is. Um, Tell us.
So that is a variant cover for issue 3 of Reptil, which I believe would be out in July. It is something that I drew. When I pitched the book, I said, also keep in mind that I also draw. So if you want me to do a cover, and it worked out. But the cover that they were sort of interested in me bringing to the table was something that felt similar to the Aztec Wonder Woman and Superman images that I'd done before, because
Okay.
they're images that if you look at them from a ways away and squint your eyes, you should be able to tell who they are. But up close, you see that they are images of Aztec heroes. So that's what they wanted me to do, and I wanted to include, some of his visual imagery that is definitely him, is like these triangular kind of shapes. So I wanted to do that with his body paint, and I kind of like went a little bit in on his haircut, a little bit shorter than like he has, and then did Stegosaurus body stuff on him. But yeah, I'm proud of that piece. I think it's good.
Hey, being a '90s kid myself, growing up on Fox Kids and on Power Rangers, as you can see behind me,
Mm-hmm.
um, just like a, a green, a green Power Ranger like warrior. Hey, man, this is,
Yep. I'm
this is beautiful, beautiful.
fellow 90s kid right here.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, just, that's kind of what got me into all this Marvel stuff. But let's go
Yeah.
ahead and talk about how was it working with with your team, building this character and putting this book together. How was there? There's I don't know if it's a myth, but people talk about the Marvel method. I know you do not work like that, but
I don't.
how was this? How was this approach going back to like Hotel Dare and Reptile? How was the approach different? Um,
Yeah, I will say that working with the team has been nothing but great. I'm not lying either. Like, I think everyone that's worked on it is amazing. It's a great Latinx team mostly, and I really enjoy working with other people, working with the editors that I'm working with. I think they're fantastic. And I feel like the edits and the things that they've had me do have challenged me to be a better writer. And I
okay,
think that's invaluable. That's really great. The the thing that changed the most was my writing process. And like you mentioned with Hotel Dare, well, before Reptile, any of my comics that I wrote, I would be very technical and specific in the page layout, in like how I would describe how many panels, what configuration they were in, et cetera, et cetera,
hmm
and then what was in them. But I would also tell the editors and the artists I work with, that's just the best way I have to kind of get it out of my head. And if you have it, I don't want you to feel beholden to that. If you think of a better way, as long as the dialogue fits and the story comes across, great. Like, I don't think coming from an illustration background myself, I know that an artist doesn't want to feel like, for lack of a better term, they don't want to feel like someone's art monkey. Like, draw this, do this. They need to feel like, an integral part of the process, and that they're bringing their own ideas to the table too. And half the time I'll write something and then I'll see what a need does. And I'm like, you just elevated what I wrote to a crazy level. It's great. But one of the things that changed was sort of, not even needing to write in those technical kind of, panel layouts, just trusting the artists to do what they do.
okay,
And if I'm being honest, coming up with those sort of layouts and configurations is one of the things that takes me the longest when writing a comic.
Okay.
So there was a bit of a like nervousness, but a huge amount of freedom in being able to write like, this page has 4 panels and then just moving on.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so that's for me the biggest thing that changed during that process. And if there's another artist that wants to work that way, like, great, that's fine with me. I think the reason that sometimes it can be kind of scary is because when you work in comics, quite often you're paired with people that you've never worked with before or you don't know. So, you know, on some level you're like, well, how do I know I can trust this person or this person will do a good job? And, you know, 9 times out of 10, it works out great. So, and I would say on Reptil, it's been amazing.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Every this may be, you may not be able to answer this question, but every hero needs a villain. Who can we expect in this book? I mean, or what villainous challenge
Sure.
it will Reptil be facing?
I will think about what's been shown.
Okay,
So,
no pressure. We don't want
think about what I can say. So it has been revealed that this villain is called Megalith. In the preview, it shows him kind of in this costume that's kind of like rock, or like a rock helmet, and that he has these sort of like earth-based powers. And in the preview that is shown, he is yelling at Beto. I call him Beto because I didn't want to write Humberto every time I had to write something he said. So Beto, which is the nickname for Humberto anyway. And I'm getting on a tangent here, but like it's the most nicknamed name. And, you know, like we in the Mexican culture, we love our nicknames. So Beto, Betito, like, you know, whatever. But in the comic, he wants Beto's amulet.
Okay.
And that's all I can really say. But I will say this. In a lot of the things that I read when I was sort of teaching myself how to write and how to write better, I came across something that talked about how your villain is infinitely stronger and better and more interesting if they are really good at exploiting the hero's biggest weakness. And that's why the Joker is great for Batman. Batman doesn't want to kill anyone, and the Joker's like, kill me, I don't care. And so I think that's what I tried to do with this book, is I tried to think, what is Beto's greatest weakness? What is it that really he, struggles with? And can I make this villain exploit that in some way? So hopefully you have that to look forward to. He's on the cover. The villain's on the cover of issue 3, I believe. So yeah, if you want to see him, check out the preview or the cover for issue 3.
All right, we won't spoil anything else. Well, it's not spoiling, but yeah, we'll definitely leave the surprises for the audience. And then they can find this book at the local comic book shop on Wednesday. Are you nervous for Wednesday? I mean, how are you feeling? Your first, Marvel book being out there.
I'm not nervous. I'm going to go to the comic book shop and pick up a copy for myself. I think I will pick one up, flip through it, read it.
I want to apologize because I keep saying nervous. Are you excited? How excited are you?
Yeah, I'm excited. Like I told you, I'm sort of a person that just like doesn't get my hopes up, so I'm not disappointed. I am that type of person, but I try to remind myself to stay in this space where I'm like grateful and where I acknowledge the work that I've done. And so it makes me think back to, buying Marvel comics as like an 11-year-old kid. And like, I don't think that kid would have ever thought that he would be doing this. So that's pretty cool. I think he would have hoped he would maybe, but yeah, I think that I'll just indulge that kid on Wednesday and go pick up an issue and maybe post about it on Twitter, and that might be it.
Well, we're extremely happy for you. I think everybody within the community is definitely looking forward to this book, and then even outside of the community, definitely supporting a new Marvel character. that happens to be Latino, but that looks. If you look at this image right here, that is badass, badass.
I'm glad people like it. I think it's cool.
Yeah, yeah, and again, just bringing life to this character that's like that was first introduced in 2010, I believe, through the animated series, and then kind of brought into the book because there wasn't, I believe, a Latino character that they kind of that Marvel already had if they wanted to feature in the what was it, the
Yeah.
superhero
Squad.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, if you really dig, you can find some great Latina superheroes in Marvel. And I think one of the issues is that many of them haven't had their own standalone series. There's a great character called Hummingbird. Her name's Araceli Penalba, and she's got the powers of like an Aztec god, and she was rescued by like a clone of Spider-Man when she was being trafficked out of Mexico and doesn't remember much about her past. And I'm like, great, that's a kickoff for a whole book. Like, so then what is her past? Like, and so I think that hopefully, and that's not necessarily even something that just like Mexicans relate to, like, oh, cool, I want to read this book about this Mexican. But like, that's something that anybody who watches a soap opera or a TV show, like, that's a great setup for a story. So yeah, I think there's great characters that can be focused on, and I'm really happy that for some reason they were like, let's give Reptil a series.
Beautiful. One obscure character that I kind of like that I see so much potential in is Armadillo. Armadillo, maybe a revamped version. I would love to see Marvel do what they did with M'Baku for the Black Panther film and stuff.
Oh yeah.
But Armadillo, it just like he has a tragic origin story, and he has ties to lucha libre or wrestling. So I would definitely love.
That's awesome. That's fun. That's a visually interesting thing to have in a comic.
Yeah, and he's a bruiser just like Reptil. So
he's crazy looking. Yeah, I think that if you really dig into a character and you think about like, what their childhood was like, how much money they had, who were their friends, you can sort of help a character through a story be really interesting if you know enough about them. And I think that if you dig into the character, you really learn who they are, then that helps your story because you are more able to tell how a character will react in any situation because you know a lot about them. So yeah, I don't see why not. Armadillo would be great.
when writing characters, sometimes a writer or an author will definitely kind of sometimes, not in all the cases, but instill something of themselves within that character. What do you relate with? What do you relate to with Humberto, with Beto? Like what do you guys have in common?
I think that what we most have in common is wanting to do a good job. Does that make sense? Like, I think you don't really get into this too much. It's just more of something that's in my mind. I think that part of what makes him scared to, go full dinosaur is this lack of control. And I'm a control freak. So I love to, I make to-do list every day. I check stuff off of it. I organize myself. I like that control. So the idea of not giving into that is because it's something that he, doesn't fully understand, something he can't, for lack of a better word, I guess, control. So yeah, wanting to do a good job, wanting to do things right or perfect, I think that can be a good quality, but if you push it a little further, it can be a detrimental quality. So I think that's what we share. It's maybe a stereotype, but we both love tacos. We both love anime.
Al pastor, de pollo, arrachera. What's the preference?
Well, for me, my preference, I love al pastor. I even love just a basic chicken, but I won't tell you what his favorite is because
Okay.
you'll have to read and find out.
All right. I'm curious to know if he'll be eating pozole though. That's shout out to my mom right there.
Yeah. My grandma, my abuela, Mama Lupe, which is also the name of a character in Hotel Dare, always gave me, when I would go to visit, chocolate abuelita and conchas. So now I put that in like every comic. I'm obsessed. So I love my sweetbread.
And so, and I'm glad you brought up Hotel there, because let's transition into Hotel there. Tell us, like, people, for a lot of for some people, they may discover you through Reptil. So let's definitely highlight some of your
Oh,
previous
sure.
works, and hopefully, yeah, get them out there. Um, Tell us about Hotel there.
Hotel Dare is my second original graphic novel that came out. It's a book I wrote. The art is by my dear friend. I call her mi hermana mexicana. We've never met, but we talk every day. It's Claudia Aguirre. This is Hotel Dare. Sorry, it's kind of bright. There we go.
I'm pulling it up on the screen right now.
Sweet. It's essentially a book about three siblings, one of which is two of which are adopted, who get sent to live with their creepy Mexican abuela, Mama Lupe, in a disgusting hotel that she owns in Mexico. And while cleaning the rooms, the kids discover that every room in the hotel leads to a different magical world. So Narnia times like however many rooms are in this this hotel. And the kids begin exploring these different worlds. And the setup is that they come to realize that maybe Mama Lupe doesn't own this hotel by coincidence.
Okay.
Maybe she's been to some of these places. So that's sort of the mystery setup. And when I pitched this book, what I said was, well, the way I came to this book was I'm a huge fan of Star Trek, and sometimes I'll like watch it before bed. And I realized that whenever there's a problem on Star Trek, there's like this science-ish explanation of what the problem is, and then this techno-babble science-ish explanation of how to fix it. And that's usually most of the episode. And I thought I was in England with my spouse. We were on like the Leavesden Studios tour, like Harry Potter thing, and I saw I just realized that, when like a wizard has a problem, they like wave a wand and like bing and problem solved kind of. And I thought, well, then what a spaceship really needs is a wizard. Like that could solve their problems a lot faster. And I thought, well, how do I get a wizard on a spaceship? And I thought, okay, so maybe through a portal. Well, but then obviously these are different worlds. I need a thing that, and I was like, well, maybe a hotel. A hotel has lots of rooms. So like that's sort of how the thing came about. And yeah, I felt like if this was a book I was going to make, and it was my, like I mentioned, my only chance kind of to do a fantasy for Mexicans, then I wanted to do something that would be fantasy and sci-fi.
Okay.
And the the point of the book is sort of, these three kids, their family's kind of broken. Their dad and their grandma don't talk to each other, and they kind of, don't know why. And each world they go to, they sort of encounter someone from that world who also feels like they don't fit into their family. And I really wanted to do a book for kids that talked about how family are people who treat you like family.
Okay.
I think we have a lot of, especially in the Latinx community, like a strong, like, this is our family, our blood ties, etc. But depending on who you are, you can be Latinx and, not be close with your blood family, or you could have other people that you are close with that just treat you really well. So I wanted to do something along those lines, and it's something I'm really proud of. I also love a badass grandma.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's this book is basically if you found out that your abuela was Doctor Who.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And
Claudia and I are really proud of it. We want to do more, so hopefully one day we'll get to do another volume or two, or who knows.
all right. And then in anything, what could possibly be the premise for a future Hotel there book? What do you
Well, since
think
there's endless worlds they can go to,
in
you
particular
know,
regards to whether it's space or any locale?
sure. I think you would explore, or we would explore, a bit more of the worlds we got a couple of the worlds we got a little hint at in the first book, but I would want to do something where you sort of see the adventures maybe of a young Mama Lupe.
Okay.
Imagine like Frida in a spacesuit with a ray gun.
Oh my gosh.
That's pretty much Mama Lupe when
Cool.
she was young. And so I think that's a whole series right there, is the different worlds she went to and what she did when she was young, what she was searching for. But there are stories to be told still with these kids. And I think, figuring out how to strengthen the family they have is a through line that would kind of run through all the books.
So here, go
Yeah.
ahead. Go
Oh
ahead.
no, just to say too that I think a huge trope in kids literature is like the orphan. You get rid of the parents so the kids can go on an adventure. And I love the idea of the parents showing up and having this kind of like intergalactic fantasy road trip, I guess, with their kids.
Yeah, it's also a trope in superheroes, right? I mean, we have all the.
Absolutely.
I think somebody was kind of like they wanted to put Batman and Spider-Man and all these characters together and call them the orphans.
Yeah.
Team them up or
Yeah,
something.
that's Superman, even though he got adopted by a nice couple, but that's Batman and yeah, Spider-Man. It's a ton of characters.
Yeah. And so what can like after Reptil.
That's Reptil.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe.
Maybe we'll have to find out.
Maybe you'll find out. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's the 4-issue miniseries. When does the 4th issue? When is that set for release? In August or
So I believe that issue 1 is this week. Issue 2 should be June. Issue 3 should be July, and I think issue 4 will be during Hispanic Heritage Month, which is September.
okay, all right. So we'll have to wait
Yeah.
until September, but that's awesome. And
Yeah.
the culmination there, because as things begin to reopen, do you see yourself doing any signings or anything special for
Sure. I mean, I'm fully vaccinated, so I think I would be up for it. I think that mentally, a lot of us are still in a place where we're not used to going out anymore, and so I think we'll just need to get to that point where we get used to it. But I would love to do more shows like Latinx, Latino-based comic shows. I think those are really fun, and I have a lot of artwork and books that that's my whole career is geared towards this representation for this awesome community that I'm a member of. So I would love to do more shows like that. Not that I wouldn't do other shows, but
yeah.
it just depends. I think we'll have to see, but I would do it, and I'd do signings, and
Yeah, because I know, again, it's like I think for the most part, a lot of us have been domesticated, right? And it's just like we've become these homebodies.
yeah.
So definitely, it's definitely going to be a transition. I think summer is going to be hopefully booming, but we have to be careful. We have to be. But in regards to the pandemic, or other than the recovery of the pandemic, what else would you like to cover today? Anything else that you'd like?
I would also encourage people to check out Deadweight, which is my first graphic novel. It's something that I wrote with my friend Molly Muldoon, and the artwork is by Matthew Seeley, who is a good friend of mine from art school.
Mhm.
And this is Deadweight. Its subtitle is Murder at Camp Bloom.
Awesome.
And it's it's a teenage murder mystery set at a weight loss camp.
Oh my gosh.
And the main character, her name is Jessie.
Okay.
She's Mexican American, and she loves fashion. She wants to design clothes. And her parents tell her that she can go to the fashion design summer program she wants to next summer if she loses weight at this camp this summer. And of course, she ends up witnessing a murder. So it's a book about teamwork, about how you're stronger together, and she kind of creates this core friend group to help her at the camp. And I wanted to do something that I felt talked to the relationship between weight and food for different cultures. I think that a lot of, especially in our culture, every gathering is what? It's like sopes, tamales, pozole. It's, And your abuela or your mom is like, did you eat? Why aren't you eating? You're so skinny, eat. And then the minute you gain weight, they're like, ay que gordo, or mira la gordita, you
Yeah.
know? And a lot of us within this community know that it's technically not supposed to be meant as a mean insult to say that someone's like la gorda or whatever. But for a lot of us who are children of immigrants or, grow up in the States, we may live half of our day at home speaking Spanish, but the rest of our day is lived out in the United States, where at school or, at work, we interact with other Americans where being fat is considered a bad thing sometimes. And so I think it does stuff to our heads. That Jesse in one part of the book says something like, every family function is eat, eat, eat. And, when I'm skinny, they're like, you need to eat. And when I'm fat, they're like, why are you fat? So I may as well just like myself the way I am. And
It,
so I think that there's different relationships between, family functions, food, and weight for the Latinx community. And it's likely different for other communities. And so I thought that was an interesting thing to maybe write a book about. And so I did. And then I'm also really proud of a 4-issue run that I wrote for Steven Universe, which is it's called Our Fearful Trip. And it's about Lars and the off colors and a space adventure they have on their way trying to get back home to Earth. That's through Boom, which is also the company that published Hotel Dare.
okay.
But yeah, that's some of my work.
In regards to Steven Universe, did you, in order to research, did you watch hours and hours of Steven Universe episodes?
I may have already seen every episode,
You are
but
definitely.
yeah, so I was already really familiar with the show and I loved it. The same thing sort of happened like Reptil, only, this was before I had an agent. I got an email from someone at Boom that asked me, if I liked Steven Universe. I was like, well, yeah. And would I be interested in writing a 4-issue arc about Lars? And I thought, yeah, because when he gets to space, that's a story that they spend like 3 or 4 episodes on. And then we kind of don't see much of what happens there until he gets back. And I was like, that's a whole series. Like, that's a Star Trek episode. Like,
Yeah.
what happened on this spaceship? And again, they were like, we're gonna ask a couple people to pitch some stuff. And I was literally flying to Palm Springs that night. I was like headed out, and I had my suitcase there. I was like packing, and I was like, oh man, I want to do this quick, but I don't know if I have time. And I just put on the appropriate episodes that I felt I might need to rewatch so that I would get stuff right. And I would watch those, take notes, put a shirt in my luggage, take notes, put some pants in the luggage. And that night I was able to write up a pitch for an idea. And, Lars, now that he's somewhat kind of magical because of Steven, he doesn't need to eat, but he loves to bake. So like, what do you do with this skill that you no longer need to use? Like, it's still a good thing if you can use it maybe to make other people happy and in the service of other people. Isn't that sort of like being a space captain? So, that's what I kind of did there. And that night I flew to Palm Springs. And when I landed, the editor was like, great, let's do it. So you didn't have to look for anyone else.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
But I'm really proud of that. It's a fun book.
And then any other books?
I have 2 books coming out later this year. One is called Who Was the Voice of the People? And that's about Cesar Chavez. And so it's a biographical graphic novel, sort of meant for like middle grade readers. That comes out in October.
In October?
And also in October is my next original graphic novel that I wrote. And the artwork is also by Claudia Aguirre.
Oh, beautiful.
And it's called Lifetime Passes.
Okay.
And it's about a theme park, Southern California theme park. But it's about a Mexican girl whose parents were deported. And this theme park that she's obsessed with because it's where her parents used to take her. It's like some of her happiest memories. And the synopsis has been released. So I guess what I can say is that because her parents were deported, she lives with her aunt, and her aunt is the head nurse at an elder care facility. And when she goes to the park for a trip, one day in the summer with her friends, she discovers a weird secret that the park has, that if a member of your party dies while at the park, to avoid a lot of legal trouble, the rest of your party will receive lifetime passes. So she decides with her friends to create this fake senior citizen outreach program to take the elderly to the park in hopes that while there, one of them just might die. But starts to become friends with one of the ladies that goes with her, and learns about her interesting life, doesn't want anything bad to happen to her. So that's sort of the setup for this book.
And so that's the setup, but it's such an interesting setup. How did that come about? Like what? Like, 'cause again, it just this is not the first time I hear that the premise. I believe you went over it in your LCAF panel a few months ago, and so yeah, how did this come about?
Well, I lived in Southern California for a long time.
Okay,
I lived in Valencia, so that's where Six Flags is. I would
okay,
also go down to Disneyland as often as I could because I loved it. But it was more about noticing sort of this culture that people have who are really into theme parks. And Valencia is also an area that where the homes look very similar.
okay.
It's like they filmed an episode of the X-Files there where like a cult was living there and they all dressed the same. so that's sort of the vibe of Valencia. And I thought this place is also sort of manufactured and fake, and so is a theme park. But people seem to find more reality and joy and obsession in this fake place versus this real place. So there was this weird interplay there. And I also am someone who loves to read about weird things that happen at theme parks.
Okay.
So that sort of combination really helped. And I just wanted to. I also love old classic Hollywood movies, and I love like Hitchcock movies. And so I wanted to write something about someone who had a history in Southern California with a lot of that stuff. And so that's where the old lady comes in. It's interesting to sometimes come up with like an idea where you think about, okay, so a story about an old lady who has a background like knowing a lot about Hollywood cinema. And then there's this other thing I have about a theme park. And it's crazy when sometimes like those things come together and you realize they can work in the same thing. I just love the idea of a teenager. I remember once I saw, like, I think it was The Simpsons. It was Lisa. She was like, when you're a kid, nobody listens to you. And Grandpa Simpson was like, when you're old, nobody listens to you. And I was like, oh, that's what this book is about. Like this teenager and this old lady kind of coming together and realizing what they maybe have in common or where they can, meet up. So yeah, that's sort of how that came about. It was the first idea I had for a graphic novel and the one I spent the most time researching and before I pitched it was like 15 years in the making.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I'm really excited. Claudia killed it. She just like, we got to invent a whole theme park. And so, it's really fun. And I think that her artwork's incredible in it. So I can't wait for people to see it. That's also this coming October.
Being not too far from a Six Flags myself here in the Chicagoland area, what is a roller coaster name? What's the name of a roller coaster in that graphic?
Okay. The theme park is called Kingdom Adventure. So it's like a fairy tale themed theme park. And a big part of the story centers around, because every once in a while, like a theme park will update with like a new attraction or whatever. So the newest attraction at this theme park is this green roller coaster that is dragon themed.
Okay.
And the dragon in this fairy tale theme park, his name is Eldrick. So the roller coaster is called Eldrick's Spine. Eldrick. Because like his spine has all these like ridges on the back, so it looks kind of like a dragon. So yeah, that's the thing. But there's like, you see every section of the park in the book, so that's kind of fun.
That's super exciting. Super exciting.
Yeah.
We have Julio Anta from Home. He's like,
yeah,
welcome.
That's a great book. Everybody should check out Home.
yeah, I have issue 2. Julio, I'll hit you up soon. But Terry, any closing thoughts? Again, Wednesday, Reptil is coming out, and then it's coming out every month after that. You have your 2 other announced projects that are coming in the fall. Anything?
Yeah, I would just hopefully tell people, if you check out Reptil and you like it, post about it. Be someone who helps our community know that it exists, I guess. If you don't like it, don't say anything. If you don't like it, tell someone anyway. They might like it.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough with the Twitterverse, but not definitely, man.
Yeah.
Do definitely encourage and support our own, and definitely I'm definitely looking forward to it. Again, I'm super excited for it. I really want to thank you for coming on today, and yeah, thank you for supporting the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much for having me. I love the show.
All right, awesome. I'll see you in a bit, Terry.
Alrighty.
Okay. All right, guys, that was another edition of Cuentos Y Comics. Once again, a huge thank you to Terry Blas, today's special guest. Remember, this Wednesday, check out your local comic book store to pick up a copy of Marvel's Reptil. Um, thank you so much, guys, and I'll see you on the next edition of Cuentos Y Comics.